What's up everyone? Alex here. Master Detective Archives Raincode is a game that you probably wouldn't expect to be in talks for Game of the Year. And how would it? It's made by a relatively unknown set of developers in the form of Kazutaka Kodaka and his team at 2Q Games, coming off of a relatively unimpressive stint after creating the cult classic Danganronpa trilogy. And even then, not many have played Danganronpa thanks to its proclivity towards making high school students kill each other. Not exactly the happiest and most popular ways to attract an audience. As you might expect, these thematics hindered any sort of possibility of its developers being taken seriously in any type of wide-ranging gaming conversation. But what people don't know is that the aforementioned trilogy is also known for many other things to its loyal fans. Its dark humor, great character and story development, highly stylized visuals, strange action gameplay, and fantastic whodunit mysteries. Master Detective Archives Raincode is all of these things, minus the high school student killings of Danganronpa. But to merely say that it's just that, or that it's Danganronpa but in a different universe, yeah, I see you, ignores the improved quality of each of its individual parts, which downplays the caliber of the final product. And the resulting outcome is, even to my surprise, one of the best gaming experiences I've had this year. But if you've never played Danganronpa or have merely had a mild interest in the games, you're probably thinking to yourself, with so many other games coming out, why should I even bother playing this game or even add it to my backlog? A reasonable question. For starters, if you like games like Phoenix Wright or Ghost Trick, or you're in the mood for murder mysteries, secret plots, and a more story-driven experience with some light action, I dare say that you'll find anything better than Raincode. And before anyone asks, you don't need to have played Danganronpa to enjoy this game. I was actually playing through Raincode on the side while playing through both Final Fantasy XVI and Atelier Marie Remake, and the contrast it provided against these two other games was quite welcome. And despite it having to fight for attention, it came out on top of these other two several times, because the mysteries it provided were so gripping and exciting. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. In Master Detective Archives Raincode, you play from the perspective of one Yuma Cocohead. Yes, Cocohead. Yuma seems to have suffered a case of animamnesia, an affliction so deadly that countless anime and JRPG protagonists seem to have it. Anyway, you soon realize that Yuma is a member of a detective organization tasked with uncovering the ultimate secret of a district known as Kanai Ward. But in order to do so, Yuma will have to employ the services of Shinigami. Yes, the god of death. Oh, isn't it cute? It looks like a cute little Slimer from Ghostbusters. To help solve seemingly unrelated cases that'll help shed some light to this mystery. Master Detective Archives Raincode's gameplay loop starts off by establishing the theme of the current chapter, which then eventually proceeds to an investigation where you gather clues, and then tosses you into a mystery labyrinth where you'll do all of your case solving. I'll go over each of these in detail one by one, talking about relevant points for each. Unlike the Danganronpa trilogy, Kanai Ward and its many nooks and crannies, as well as the many characters you'll meet, are all rendered in a stunning 3D style that combines realistic environments with stylized character designs. This is a huge departure from the aforementioned titles, where the characters were portrayed as 2D sprites on low polygon 3D backgrounds. And while the realistic environments caught me by surprise initially, the way the characters' color palettes were chosen helped mesh with the game's surroundings quite well. And I'll just say it here, I'm a big fan of Ryuko Matsuzaki's character designs, and there's a ton of that in this game. This isn't all just for show, however, as you're able to truly explore Kanai Ward to your heart's content, even going so far as to take on a few side quests here and there to help you rank up. And by rank up, I mean that the game has a leveling system, though I wouldn't go so far as to call it an action RPG. Ranking up means that you're able to spend points to buy special abilities that can aid you during your Mystery Labyrinth expeditions. And if you don't know how any of these work but still spent the points anyway, you'll be happy to know that you can reallocate these at any time for free. While exploring Kanai Ward, you can also pick up glowing colored orbs that will unlock each of the supporting characters' gumshoe gabs. Though not necessary, the gumshoe gabs really give a lot of background to your detective teammates, sharing with you how they think, what they find important, and many other personal details. And unlike the social links of Persona, the gumshoe gabs can be viewed at any time, so you can watch as many or as little of these as you want. Given that Raincode was released on the Switch, I do have to bring up that the game's loading screens are numerous and can take a long time, especially when initiating and returning from these gumshoe gabs. This is probably due to Raincode using Unreal Engine for the Switch, which has traditionally had a hard time performing consistently on the platform. Thankfully, the action sequences you'll encounter throughout are stable and responsive, though there's a particular set of QTE sequences in a later chapter that could have felt better were the game able to run at a higher frame rate. With all that said, this is Kanai Ward, a city where crime runs so rampant that, eventually, continuing down the game's main story path will land you in the middle of a crime scene. This is where the investigation part of Raincode comes in. During these sequences, you'll have to speak to eyewitnesses, examine evidence, and do anything else that can help with the investigation. What makes Raincode different from other games is that your detective teammates have a unique power called a forte, which you can tap into during certain parts of the investigation. This lets you do some incredible things, like going back in time to the scene of the crime when it was first discovered, or being able to disguise your appearance and voice as someone else entirely. This gives each chapter's investigation a unique flavor, ensuring that every crime scene you experience utilizes these fortes to a great effect. And don't worry, you'll never be allowed to leave an investigation unless you've gotten everything the game wants you to obtain. One thing that new players will notice in these crime scenes is that the blood is colored pink. This style choice is something that's been carried over from Danganronpa that helps soften the brutality of the crimes committed. The brightness of this shade of pink also matches well with the neon light-dominated areas of Kanai Ward, which too help dampen the murder's aura. Once you've finished your investigations, it's then time to open up a portal into someplace and head into the Mystery Labyrinth. And what's this? Shinigami has transformed from a cute floating tadpole ghost thing to a buxom, vivacious goddess of death. This brings me to Raincode's writing, which is one of the strongest parts of the game. Murder mysteries live and die by how well each chosen word and dialogue is written, and both the writers and localization team did a fantastic job of creating a script that manages to carefully balance the seeming seriousness of the committed crimes, while also allowing for a good bit of hilarity, mischief, and comedy to come across well. While there's a ton of story to tell in Raincode, it is generously peppered with many of these aforementioned seasonings, ensuring that the entire experience of watching the story unfold doesn't feel like it drags on. And that's quite important, especially since you need to pay attention to almost everything, especially when trying to solve murder cases. This leads me to Shinigami once again, who serves as both your helper and tormentor. Shinigami functions much like Monokuma in the Danganronpa games, in that they're both concerned with the search for the truth of things, though they go about it in very different ways. That said, you'll find that Shinigami loves tormenting poor Yuma, which extends all the way into the Mystery Labyrinth. So what is this Mystery Labyrinth I've been talking about this whole time? As I said earlier, it's where you'll solve the case. And if by seeing this, you're immediately reminded of the palaces in Persona 5, well, you're partly right. Each criminal case in Raincode has its own Mystery Labyrinth, though contrary to its namesake, you're not going to be told to get lost in a maze to finish it. Instead, the Mystery Labyrinth is a mostly linear affair that serves as a testing ground for your comprehension of the resulting crime. It does so by thrusting Yuma through various pieces of action gameplay that utilize all of the evidence you've collected from your investigation. I want to focus on the two main games in the Mystery Labyrinth since they're also a huge part of your skill tree, which is the Reasoning Deathmatch and Shinigami Puzzle. But keep in mind that there are plenty of other minigames in the Labyrinth that I'll leave for you to discover. The reasoning deathmatch pits you against an entity that's purposely trying to make the details of the crime vague by throwing a bunch of facts, lies, and generalizations at you. In order to defeat them, you'll have to equip yourself with the right evidence and slash the statement that this disproves, all the while dodging and slashing others. While there's a reward for dodging statements at the last minute or slashing through floating remarks, I didn't really find these necessary, as I found that utilizing the right evidence is more important than trying to get too creative during these sequences. The Shinigami Puzzle is a hangman-style game where you're firing crossbow arrows on letters to spell out a word that answers the corresponding question. The solution, of course, is based off of the findings from the resulting trip through the mystery labyrinth. The problem with this game is that it often asks questions that, more often than not, have potentially multiple answers. And with a time limit involved and a slowly rotating barrel full of letters, you might realize that the answer is one thing, but actually another, which can be a bit frustrating. These games, and many more like it in the mystery labyrinth, help you walk through the events of the crime to great effect. While never intended to be as mechanically complex as dedicated action games, these action sequences provide a much-needed sense of variety in what would otherwise be a game with lots and lots of reading. It's through these action sequences that you're able to engage more with the ongoing mystery, immersing you even further as you unravel its plot. It's a clever trick that ties gameplay with logical thinking, and a definite signature piece for its developers. Providing the soundtrack for Raincode is Masafumi Takada, who has collaborated with Kodaka in the Danganronpa trilogy. Many of Takada's tracks call back to his work in Danganronpa, employing the use of organs, synths, and even a conga, which is especially evident while exploring the mystery labyrinth. But there are several parts of the game, especially prevalent when exploring Kanai Ward, when Takada brings a more acid jazz vibe, which taps into our own memories of Persona 5's soundtrack. And speaking of sound, the amount of voice lines in Raincode is a ton more when compared to the Danganronpa trilogy. Much like how the game's action sequences move things along, these voice lines help push the pace of the story forward, allowing players to just sit back and enjoy the story as it's unfolding. It also helps that the voice acting is superb and have had some truly great performances, led by both Lucien Dodge and Anjali Kunapaneni, as both Yuma and Shinigami respectively. By untangling itself from the shackles of Danganronpa, Kazutaka Kodaka and his team have finally created a game that's more accessible thematically, though that doesn't necessarily mean that there's any less murder involved. Master Detective Archive's Raincode, in many ways, feels like an evolution of ideas that its developers have toyed around with in their previous works, once again creating an experience that no one has ever dared attempt to replicate. Its blending of action sequences to help work you through its deductions, as well as its gripping overarching mystery, will keep you coming back for more each time, and as grave as its murders are, its cast of characters are able to lighten the mood thanks to their clever use of familiar tropes. Not many are talking about Raincode, but they should be, because this is undoubtedly one of the year's best games.